"Don't come for Thanksgiving," Patricia said softly, her voice carrying that false gentleness she had perfected over decades of delivering devastating news wrapped in maternal concern. Each word felt deliberately chosen, carefully weighted to sound caring while cutting deep into places I thought I had learned to protect. The silence stretched between us through the phone line, thick and suffocating. I could hear her breathing. Could picture her in their Connecticut kitchen with its granite countertops and family photos, where I appeared less and less frequently over the years. "We'll just say you're working," Marcus added from what sounded like the background, his tone casual but cutting like a blade wrapped in velvet. "You know, emergency surgery or something. People will understand. Doctors are always busy, right? It's what everyone expects from you anyway." His words carried that particular brand of cruelty that he had mastered in childhood, the kind that sounded almost reasonable until you realized what he was actually saying. That my absence wouldn't be questioned because no one expected me to prioritize family anyway. That my dedication to saving lives was just a convenient excuse for why I never quite belonged at their table. I felt the words hit my chest like ice water, spreading through my ribcage and settling in my stomach like lead weights. My throat constricted, and for a moment I couldn't breathe properly. Couldn't force air into lungs that suddenly felt too small for my body. The walls of my penthouse apartment seemed to close in around me, the morning sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, doing nothing to warm the chill that had settled into my bones. But I didn't argue. I couldn't find my voice. Couldn't form the words that might have defended me or demanded an explanation for why my own family was uninviting me from a holiday. I had been anticipating for months. Instead, I stood frozen in my kitchen, gripping my coffee mug so tightly my knuckles went white, listening to them plan my exclusion with the efficiency of a surgical procedure. But when Isabella saw my photograph at their perfect family gathering, she walked out immediately, her designer heels clicking against their hardwood floors like a countdown to Judgment Day. She knew exactly who I was, and more importantly, she knew what they had done to me, what they had said about me, what they had revealed about themselves in my absence. I had been counting down the days to Thanksgiving for weeks, not dramatically with calendar markings or countdown apps, but with the quiet, careful anticipation of someone who rarely gets to feel like they belong somewhere important. The way a child counts sleeps until Christmas morning. Except I was 34 years old and still hoping my family might want me there, might see me as more than an obligation to be managed. This wasn't just any Thanksgiving. This was supposed to be the year everything felt different. The year I finally had enough success and stability to feel like an equal at their table, instead of the serious daughter who worked too much, and worried too much and never quite understood how to be the kind of person they valued. I cleared my entire schedule at the hospital, which meant turning down 3 lucrative consultations that would have paid for a vacation to Europe, switching my on-call duties with Dr. Rodriguez, who owed me nothing but agreed, because he could see in my eyes how much this mattered to me. How desperately I needed this one perfect family moment. I even declined a speaking engagement at a prestigious medical conference in Chicago that would have advanced my career significantly, because nothing, absolutely nothing, was going to interfere with this Thanksgiving. For 2 weeks straight, I perfected that cranberry sauce recipe, the one with orange zest and fresh rosemary that had become my signature dish over the past 8 years of family gatherings. I must have made 6 test batches, adjusting the sweetness, the tartness, the texture until it was exactly right, until it sang with the perfect balance of flavors that would make everyone at the table pause and remember why they looked forward to my contribution each year. Every year they would rave about it at the table, asking for the recipe they never bothered to write down, never acknowledging that I spent hours sourcing the best cranberries, zesting oranges by hand, selecting the perfect sprigs of rosemary from the farmer's market while they heated up store-bought sides, and took credit for putting together such a wonderful meal. This year, I had even planned to bring the ingredients to make it fresh in their kitchen, turning the preparation into a shared experience, a way to contribute that went beyond just showing up with a covered dish. I bought gifts for everyone, spending more than my resident physician's salary could reasonably afford, because I wanted each present to be perfect, meaningful, impossible to dismiss or return or forget in a drawer somewhere. For Patricia, a cashmere scarf in deep burgundy that I knew would complement her skin tone, soft enough to make her feel luxurious, expensive enough to show how much I valued her. chosen after 3 different shopping trips and consultations with sales associates who helped me find exactly the right shade and texture. For Robert, a first edition book about the Civil War that I found at an estate sale after remembering a comment he'd made about his interest in military history. During a brief conversation 6 months earlier, it had taken me weeks to track it down, calling book dealers and estate sale companies, because I wanted to give him something that showed I listened to him, that I remembered the things he cared about even when they seemed casual or unimportant, even for Marcus. Despite the fact that he had given me generic gift cards for the past 4 birthdays while I carefully selected art supplies and equipment he actually used and needed and mentioned wanting. This year, I found him a vintage camera lens he had mentioned wanting in passing. The kind of throwaway comment most people forget, but I had written down in my phone because I wanted to be the sister who remembered, who paid attention, who cared about his dreams and aspirations even when he barely acknowledged mine. I wrapped each gift in handmade paper, the kind Marcus would photograph for his Instagram aesthetic, spending an entire evening at my dining room table making sure the corners were crisp and the ribbons were perfectly curled. I even wrote personal notes on cards I made myself, pouring my heart into words I hoped would bridge the distance that always seemed to exist between us, the invisible wall that made me feel like an outsider in my own family. My overnight bag sat packed by the front door of my Manhattan penthouse for 3 days. A constant reminder of my excitement and hope. I had planned my outfit carefully comfortable but elegant, professional but approachable, the kind of ensemble that would make me look like I belonged in their family photos. I had even bought a new sweater specifically for this occasion, deep forest green with delicate gold threading, the kind that looked effortlessly elegant but had cost me 2 weeks of careful budgeting and 3 trips to different stores to find just the right shade that would complement my skin tone and hair color. I wanted to look like I belonged at their table, like I wasn't the sister who worked too hard and cared too little about the important things like fashion and social media and maintaining the right image. I wanted them to look at me and feel proud, to introduce me to Isabella with genuine warmth instead of the apologetic tone they used when they had to acknowledge my existence to outsiders. When my phone rang at 7 in the morning 4 days before Thanksgiving, I was just finishing my morning run along the East River, my breath creating small clouds in the crisp November air. The city was just waking up around me, early commuters hurrying past with coffee cups and purpose, and I felt that rare sense of contentment that came from perfect weather and good endorphins and the anticipation of something wonderful approaching. I saw Marcus's name flash across the screen and felt that familiar flutter of hope in my chest. The same feeling I'd had since childhood whenever he paid attention to me, whenever he included me in his plans or asked for my opinion or treated me like a sister instead of a burden. Maybe he was calling to coordinate our arrival times, to ask if I could pick up wine or flowers, to discuss the menu or share his excitement about introducing Isabella to the family. Something normal that siblings do when they're planning a family gathering together. I should have known better. 34 years of disappointment should have taught me to expect the worst from them. But hope has a way of making us forget our own history, of convincing us that this time will be different, that people can change, that family bonds might finally overcome whatever invisible barrier had always separated me from their warmth. "Hey, Elena," he started, using that performative casual tone that always preceded something cruel. It's the voice he uses when he wants credit for packaging cruelty in politeness, when he wants to hurt you but also wants you to thank him for how nicely he's doing it. So listen, Isabella's coming to Thanksgiving, right? She's really excited about it. She's been planning her outfit for weeks, talking about how she wants to document the whole experience for her lifestyle blog. Isabella, the lifestyle blogger with 150,000 followers. A smile that looked professionally whitened, and a talent for making everything she touched look like it belonged in a magazine spread. I had seen her in exactly 2 family photos that Marcus had posted, both of which featured captions about grateful for new beginnings and family vibes and other meaningless phrases that accumulated likes, and comments from strangers who thought they were witnessing authentic happiness. Even through Instagram's filters and professional lighting, she managed to look like she existed in a different reality than the rest of us mere mortals, like she was naturally lit from within by some divine source of effortless beauty. Her lifestyle brand was built on the fantasy of perfect moments, curated experiences, and the kind of polished domestic bliss that required professional photographers and careful staging to achieve. She's really sensitive about energy, Marcus continued, his voice taking on that faux concerned tone he used when he wanted to sound thoughtful and caring while delivering an insult. Like she can literally feel when a room has heavy vibes. And it affects her creativity and her ability to be present. You know how artists are, how we absorb everything around us and channel it into our work. I stopped walking, my running shoes suddenly feeling heavy on the pavement. The morning air was crisp against my face, but I felt heat building in my chest, spreading up my neck and into my cheeks like a fever. I pressed my free hand against a park bench to steady myself, needing the solid wood to anchor me as the world seemed to shift beneath my feet. And you know, Elena, your work, it's kind of intense. All those dying patients, all that hospital talk about diseases and treatments and medical procedures. It brings down the whole mood of a room. People come to family gatherings to escape that kind of heavy stuff, to feel joy and gratitude and connection, not to be reminded of mortality and suffering and all the dark things in the world. There it was. The word intense, not you're a brilliant physician who specializes in geriatric care and has published groundbreaking research on early Alzheimer's intervention that's being implemented in hospitals across the country. Not you've dedicated your life to giving dignity to people in their final chapters when everyone else has given up on them. Not you work 18-hour days to save lives that other doctors have written off as hopeless. Just intense. The human equivalent of a storm cloud over his perfectly curated lifestyle. A wet blanket on his aesthetic vision of family happiness. I just think, for her sake and honestly for everyone's sake, it might be better if you sat this one out. It's nothing personal, you understand. We just want everyone to be comfortable and happy. We want the day to feel light and beautiful, full of gratitude and positive energy. Nothing personal. The universal code for this is absolutely devastatingly personal. But I'm going to pretend it's not so you can't call me cruel or unreasonable or unfair. Plus, you always end up talking about work anyway. And nobody really wants to hear about diseases and death during dinner. We just want to have a nice, positive family gathering where we can focus on good things, beautiful things. Isabella's planning to take photos for her blog, and we want everything to look and feel perfect. You know, authentic but also aspirational. The irony was lost on him completely. Authentic but aspirational. Perfect but natural. He wanted a performance of family happiness that would photograph well and generate engagement. Not the messy reality of actual relationships with their complications and differences and genuine emotions. My throat felt tight, like I was swallowing glass shards. The world seemed to tilt slightly, and I had to grip the park bench harder to keep from falling. I think I managed to whisper something that sounded like, okay, but the word came out broken and barely audible, more breath than voice. Exactly 1 hour later, my phone rang again. Patricia's name lit up the screen. And I knew with absolute certainty that this was choreographed. They had planned this conversation, probably rehearsed it over coffee in their kitchen, decided who would say what and in what order to maximize the impact while minimizing their own culpability. This was a coordinated attack disguised as family concern. "Sweetheart," she began, her voice dripping with false sweetness like honey poured over broken glass. "Marcus told me you two talked. I just wanted you to know that we're only thinking about what's best for everyone involved. We're not trying to hurt anyone's feelings or cause any drama." I pressed my back against my apartment door, still in my running clothes, still trying to process what was happening. My hands were shaking and I could feel sweat cooling on my skin despite the warmth of my apartment. The familiar space suddenly felt foreign, like I was seeing it through someone else's eyes. Someone who had just been told they weren't wanted. You know how delicate Isabella is, how sensitive she is to negative energy and difficult conversations. And Marcus is really trying to make this work with her. She's good for him, Elena. She brings out his creative side, helps him see possibilities he never imagined. This could be really important for his career, for his future success. This one, like Isabella, was a rescue project he was hoping would finally house train properly. A delicate flower that might wilt if exposed to anything resembling reality or genuine human complexity. If you come, it might create confusion. You know, with your medical stories and your serious energy and all that talk about sick people and hospitals. Isabella's planning to document the whole day for her lifestyle blog. And we want it to feel warm and inviting and authentically joyful. We want her followers to see what real family happiness looks like. My hands were shaking so violently I had to set the phone down and put it on speaker, needing both hands to steady myself against the wall. The irony was staggering. They wanted to perform authentic family happiness for social media by excluding their actual family member. Honestly, darling, if you showed up, we might just have to say you're working in emergency. We wouldn't want to put everyone in an awkward position or make Isabella feel uncomfortable in her new relationship. You understand, don't you? You're so good at understanding these things, at being practical and realistic about situations. Understanding. Right. Because my presence at my own family's Thanksgiving would be the thing that ruined everyone else's comfort and happiness. The dark cloud that would destroy their perfect Norman Rockwell fantasy. Because asking me to understand my own exclusion was somehow kinder than admitting they simply didn't want me there. I didn't scream. Didn't demand to know how they could say these things to me. How they could exclude their own daughter and sister from a family holiday and then make it sound like they were doing me a favor. I didn't point out that I had cleared my schedule, bought gifts, planned contributions to their meal, or that I had been looking forward to this for weeks. I just whispered okay again and hung up before she could say anything else that would shatter whatever was left of my heart. I sat on my leather couch, staring at the blinking cursor on my laptop screen where I had been reviewing patient notes for tomorrow's rounds. My hands were still trembling and my chest felt hollow, like something vital had been scooped out and discarded. The familiar routine of medical charts and treatment plans, usually so comforting in its logic and clarity, felt impossible to focus on. Instead of focusing on the patients who needed me, who valued my expertise and dedication, I opened my banking app and began typing with methodical precision. Each click felt like a small act of rebellion, a quiet way of taking back some measure of control in a situation where I had been rendered powerless. Monthly mortgage assistance $3,200 cancelled. Car insurance and maintenance fund $450 cancelled. Emergency home repair account $15,000 frozen. Medical insurance premium supplement $800 discontinued. Marcus's art studio utilities $200 service terminated. Design software subscriptions $150 access revoked. Family cell phone plan 4 lines reduced to 1. 12 years of silent support of being the family's invisible foundation, and they wouldn't feel the impact immediately. That's the insidious thing about being quietly indispensable. People don't notice the support until it's gone, and everything starts cracking around them. They had grown accustomed to my financial contributions the way they had grown accustomed to my emotional availability, taking both for granted while simultaneously resenting my presence. The plumbing leak I paid for last winter when Patricia called crying about water damage, her voice breaking as she described the mess in their basement and the estimate from the contractor that made her panic about their retirement savings. Suddenly not my responsibility. The transmission repair on Robert's car that I covered because family helps family and we all have to stick together during tough times. Good luck with that next breakdown. The deposit I put down for Marcus's gallery space that he never paid back. Never even mentioned again after his show was cancelled for low interest. I hoped his credit was better than his memory and his gratitude. But there were smaller things too, things they probably didn't even remember. The premium cable package I added to their plan so Robert could watch his history documentaries. The grocery delivery service I set up for Patricia when she mentioned feeling tired during her recovery from knee surgery. The professional photography session I paid for when Marcus needed headshots for his portfolio. All of it cancelled with the same methodical precision I used to review patient charts. I didn't announce my decision. Didn't send angry texts or post cryptic social media updates or call them back to explain what I was doing and why. I simply removed myself from the equation they had never wanted me to be part of anyway. I turned off the soft jazz playing in my apartment, the music I had chosen to calm my nerves while I worked. I packed away the carefully wrapped gifts, each one representing hours of thought and money I couldn't spare, stacking them in my closet where they wouldn't mock me with their bright ribbons and hopeful intentions. I went to bed at 8:30 on the night before Thanksgiving, earlier than I had gone to sleep since medical school, pulling my covers over my head like a child hiding from monsters. I was alone, but no longer pretending that alone wasn't exactly where they wanted me. The silence felt different now, not peaceful but empty. Not solitary but abandoned. I thought the isolation would be the worst part of this experience. The loneliness of spending Thanksgiving by myself while knowing my family was gathering without me. I was wrong. It was the morning after Thanksgiving, around 10:30. I was in my soft grey leggings and an oversized Johns Hopkins medical sweatshirt, eating avocado toast at my kitchen counter and trying to convince myself that spending the holiday reading medical journals and catching up on patient files had been exactly what I needed. I had told myself it was peaceful, productive, better than sitting at a table where I wasn't wanted anyway, better than pretending to belong somewhere I clearly didn't. The truth was, it had been one of the loneliest days of my life. I kept checking my phone for messages that never came, kept listening for the sound of my doorbell in case someone changed their mind, kept imagining what they were doing without me while I sat in my apartment with takeout Chinese food and research papers. Patricia's name flashed across my phone screen like an accusation, like a guilty verdict I hadn't expected. The buzzing sound was harsh and demanding in my quiet apartment. Cutting through the silence I had convinced myself was peaceful. I watched it ring until it stopped. Then it started again, the vibration making my phone dance across the granite countertop. And again, more insistent this time. Finally, a text appeared, the words sharp and blaming. "Answer your phone. You've caused enough problems already." My stomach dropped so fast I had to set down my coffee mug before I dropped it. The avocado toast turned to cardboard in my mouth, impossible to swallow. My hands started shaking again, the same tremor that had plagued me since their phone calls yesterday. Caused enough problems. I had caused problems. Me, sitting alone in my apartment, excluded from their gathering. Somehow responsible for whatever had gone wrong at a party I wasn't invited to attend. 5 minutes later, Aunt Claire called. Claire, who still remembered my birthday every year with handwritten cards and flowers delivered to the hospital. Claire, who sent me congratulatory notes when I published papers and called to check on me during particularly difficult weeks at work. She was the only adult in my family who seemed to see me as a person rather than a problem to be managed, a burden to be tolerated or a resource to be exploited. I answered on the second ring, desperate for a voice that might not blame me for existing, for breathing, for somehow ruining things I had no part in. "Elena, honey." Her voice sounded stunned, almost hushed, like she was calling from a crime scene or a funeral. What on earth happened yesterday? Patricia called me this morning absolutely beside herself, crying and carrying on, saying you ruined Thanksgiving somehow, but you weren't even there, were you, sweetheart? I blinked, my brain struggling to process this information. I ruined Thanksgiving, me from my apartment 20 miles away, eating Chinese takeout and reading about advances in dementia treatment, while they gathered around their perfectly set table with their perfectly planned Instagram moments. Something happened with Isabella, Claire continued carefully, like she was stepping around broken glass or navigating a minefield. She left early, before dessert was even served. And there was shouting, and somehow your name came up in all of it. That's all Patricia would tell me. But she's absolutely furious, and Marcus is apparently. Well, she said he's not doing well. Something about his career being ruined, his reputation destroyed. I stared at my half-eaten toast, and suddenly I understood. Isabella had seen something, learned something, discovered something that had made the whole performance impossible to continue. Whatever they had said about me in my absence, whatever story they had told about why I wasn't there, whatever way they had explained or excused or dismissed my absence, had backfired spectacularly. And somehow, the woman who had been deliberately excluded from the gathering was being blamed for its spectacular failure. The sister who had been told she was too intense, too heavy, too medical, too serious was somehow responsible for destroying a day she hadn't been allowed to participate in. "Elena? Are you there, sweetheart?" "I'm here," I said quietly, my voice sounding strange and distant in my own ears. I'm trying to understand how I ruined something I wasn't invited to." Claire was quiet for a long moment, and I could almost hear her piecing together the truth, connecting the dots between Patricia's hysteria and my obvious confusion. "Oh, sweetheart, you weren't invited? They told you not to come?" For the first time since Marcus had called me 4 days earlier, since Patricia had delivered her gentle cruelty, since I had cancelled 12 years of financial support in 20 minutes of methodical clicking, I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile, but it was real, genuine. The first honest emotion I had felt since this nightmare began. "They told me I was too intense for Isabella's energy," I said, and even as I spoke the words, I could hear how absurd they sounded. That my work was too heavy, too medical. That I would ruin the positive vibes they wanted for her blog. Claire made a sound that was half gasp, half sigh. Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. That's terrible. You're a doctor, for crying out loud. You save people's lives. Yes, I thought, I save people's lives. But apparently, that wasn't the kind of thing you talked about at family dinner if you wanted to maintain the right aesthetic for social media.